Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Lang.
And this week, we are watching The Three Amigos, starring Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Short. Written by Steve Martin, Lorne Michaels, for some reason, and even stranger, Randy Newman.
Yeah.
And directed by John Landis. And so I know surprisingly more about this than a lot of the films we walk into. And I do understand at least some of the premise.
It's Galaxy Quest.
I mean...
Sort of.
You always go back to Galaxy Quest, a film that just did not connect for me. I know I'm alone in that. Everybody's like, oh, but you love Star Trek. You should... Look, we're not going to get into Galaxy Quest. I just never connected with it for some reason. Anyway, The Three Amigos, as far as I'm aware, is the story of three... I think they're supposed to be silent film actors who go down for a shoot in Mexico, I think, and end up accidentally getting involved in the Mexican Revolution. I think that's what it's about. So I've never seen this, and
Me neither. I've seen parts.
you've seen parts like on cable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies that would be on cable, but I just never got around to watching it.
This is one of those movies where the commercial turned me off. Like, I kind of wanted to see it before the commercials came out, and when the commercials came out, I'm like, eh.
So I'm surprised that you didn't see this, though, because it stars Steve Martin.
Yeah.
But you were a big Steve Martin fan.
I was a Steve Martin fan, but, like, sometimes his movies, I was like, it's a little too much. I don't know.
Wait a minute. So this is a little too much, but Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid,
No, that's...
All of Me, The Man with Two Brains.
Well, those are all early 80s films.
Is the real
this is a late 80s
This
film.
is not the late 80s. This is 1986. We had an argument about this over dinner, by the way, where he kept saying, like, oh, well, this is a film from the late 80s. What does that mean? Well, it's from 1986. 86 is the late 80s. It is not the late 80s at all. When did the late 80s become the late
Round
80s?
up.
No, you don't round up. You don't round up. This is the mid 80s. You don't get more mid than 86 unless you're 1985. And in fact, I would argue the 80s lasted until December of 1991, when Nevermind came out. Why are you... What? Why are you ughing?
No. It lasted until Wild Wild West video came out with the floating arms.
Shut up. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You know, at least during dinner you made a decent argument.
See, I remember that because
Why?
I just remember like New Year's, like they were playing that all over the place.
Well,
New Year's to 1990. So.
Okay, but at least that's 1990. That's not 1986.
Yeah. Well.
No, over dinner, this is what I'm alluding to. Over dinner, you had made the, I don't know, joking observation that the 80s ended when Appetite for Destruction came out, because I went and said the 80s ended when Nevermind came out.
No, I feel like the late 80s start with Appetite for Destruction.
Why?
Because it just, I don't know, it signaled like the end of like, you know, makeup, metal, and all that stuff.
I mean, that's fine. Look, yes, I think Appetite for Destruction was a big deal. So I'm not going to argue about that. But none of this has anything to do with The Three Amigos, except for why you didn't watch it. And I think the real reason you didn't go and watch it is because when it came out, you were probably like 15 and busy playing D&D.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, it's just that, you know, it's that just a little bit older. Like once you know, like what you're into when you're like 12 and 13 is completely different than what you're into when you're 15.
I think that's often true. Yeah. So anyway, I've not seen any of this movie, and it's not like I ever, avoided the film.
You know what? In fact, I think I avoided it because of Martin Short.
Really?
Because I was a big Chevy Chase fan. I loved Chevy Chase at the time.
Okay.
Like he was funny, and this is this is before Fletch. And then when Fletch came out, I was like, oh, this is.
Well, wait, what year is Fletch?
Fletch is, I feel like, isn't that 88, 87?
I think no. The first Fletch movie is before Cheers.
Oh, okay.
No, the first Fletch movie is like 81.
No.
I'm serious. Let's look this up.
Back me up, internet.
No.
Because I saw it in the theater.
Okay, no, 85. I'm sorry. I thought it was.
Right.
So this is before.
So late 80s.
Yeah. No! No! Oh, for the love of God!
Sorry.
Anyway.
Anyway, like, so I loved Chevy Chase at the time.
So wait, you moved from Steve Martin to Chevy Chase?
Yeah.
That's a downgrade.
It was, but I didn't know it at the time.
So, but you hated Martin Short?
He just rubbed me the wrong way. And he's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way until recently. And then recently I've been like, oh, he's actually pretty funny.
What won you over to Martin Short?
I don't know. Maybe Clifford. I don't know.
Wait, it took you until seeing Clifford this year.
Yeah.
This year to be okay with Martin Short.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's some SNL guys that you like, and then you're like, oh, I'm all over them. And so, like, he was one. Dana Carvey's definitely one.
Yeah, so part of the reason why I moved this up, actually, is because, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago or so, I was on the podcast Wheel of Randy, which is the Randy Newman podcast. Not hosted by Randy Newman, but about Randy Newman. So I was on there, and that came up, The Three Amigos, and it came up again recently, I think. And I just thought, wow, why have I just never gotten around to seeing it? So I guess it's a period piece.
I think so.
Yeah. So I guess if they're supposed to be like film stars or even silent film stars, and Mexican Revolution, I guess that would put it like maybe in the 20s. So that's going to be interesting. So we'll find out if it's that kind of a film or not. So anyway, shall we go and watch The Three Amigos?
Yep.
All right.
Blue shadows on the trail, soft wind blowing through the trees.
I want to get out of the way. I would be curious to see what a Mexican thinks watching this.
Well, it has three writers. There's Steve Martin, who's not Mexican. There's Randy Newman, who's not Mexican. And then there's this Lorne Michales.
Who's not from the United States.
Yeah. So
right.
Maybe he had a...
No. Yeah. It's very... This is kind of the thing where you can be making something that makes fun of stereotypes, but you got to be careful about how you do it and who's on your writing staff. Yeah. It's one thing to have Richard Pryor in the room when you're making Blazing Saddles. Granted, he was focusing on Mongo. Still, he was in the room. Yeah. And, the theme of that film is, making fun of racism and whatnot. This is more making fun of old cowboy movies, but in doing so, it indulges in stereotypes about Mexico.
Yep.
I'm watching this in the 21st century where we, some of us try to have a different perspective and be aware of like, hey, man, this is rooted in a lot of stereotypes and that's not cool. And if you're making fun of the stereotypes, it's still hard to do. You really have to be careful. You don't always land on that well. Now, having said that, all of the white guys in this are dumb as hell.
Yeah, in fact, there's a funny joke where the three girls are, they're attracted to the three amigos, and they sit and say, which one do you like? She's like, I like the dumbest one. And they're like, which one is that?
Yes, yeah. There is sort of a white savior problem in the film. The film never lets you forget these are the dumbest guys there is. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a problem.
Not only that, This film has a high body count.
So,
like,
yeah.
this thinks nothing of just killing like 10 Mexicans on the screen.
Yep.
At any one moment. Like,
It's surprisingly bloody.
and there's no
And
consequences at all. Like,
No.
Like the churches get bombed. Like just people are getting killed left and right.
And
there's no comment.
and there isn't even a helicopter in sight. Because, this was directed by John Landis.
Yeah. Well, there was a
Yeah.
plane though.
There was a plane, yeah.
Sure. And there was a kid in the movie.
And there was a kid in the movie, and I'm just surprised the plane wasn't dropped on the kid.
Yeah.
John Landis has made some movies that I really, really enjoy. He is a bad person, okay? And his son is also a bad person.
So he was on trial for the...
Yeah, this is relevant because he was on trial for manslaughter during the making of this movie.
Yeah.
And the editing of the movie, which that's really weird to have to like kind of have in the back of your head while you're watching this. Like everybody's just like, yeah, we'll still work with you. Hollywood is a bad place.
Yeah. And to find out, like, it could have been Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
With Steve Martin, Bill Murray, and who is Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. Spielberg isn't really known for directing comedies, but he knows how to make an action movie that has comedy in it. Or he knows how to like bring out humor in an action piece, which I mean could work really well. I'm losing my train of thought.
John Landis.
John Landis. God, he's terrible. Yeah, I mean, so he made some films that Trading Places and Coming to America. They're great.
Right.
I'm pretty did he direct the Blues Brothers?
Oh, he might have. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But we're gonna watch another one of his films, American Werewolf in London.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he had a really good batting average, and this is where you definitely see it start to fall off. It just feels stretched out too much. There's a bit of a drag to it, and this is edited. He didn't even edit this because his version apparently was much longer, had a whole bunch of other scenes. There was an entire backstory in Hollywood that we didn't see.
Which means there would have been more Phil Hartman, which we all want.
I know, right? Yeah, see, that's the thing. I do kind of want to see the version of the movie that had more Phil Hartman, more John Lovitz. Fran Drescher was a character.
Yeah.
There was an entire section of the film that was set in Hollywood because the film is set in 1916 and they are silent film stars. So it turns out I was right about that. Yeah. They don't foment a revolution. That was wrong.
Well, the thing is that you saw there is this video of Randy Newman saying that's what he was writing.
Right.
On David Letterman or something.
Yeah.
And
so who knows what he may have just been joking though. I mean, he's one of those guys who you know. But it's set in 1916. They are silent film stars, and there is this stuff in the background of the shorts period that were set in Hollywood that there. For instance, there's a billboard for a film called The Dancing Cavalier, which is great because that's a reference to Singing in the Rain. So there's things in the background that I go, oh hey, it's
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have seen more of that movie, but we don't get much of that movie. On the other hand, if the rest of the movie that we didn't see drags as much as this one does, maybe that's all for the best. This movie is 144 minutes, and you could easily have gotten it down under 90. It just, I don't know, there's bits of it that drag. There's an entire sequence that doesn't even make a whole lot of sense with the burning bush or the singing bush and this.
But that was fun. I kind of wish there was more madcap stuff.
Oh no! So here's the thing, that stuff was fun, but I wish there was more of that, and so that it didn't feel out of place.
Yeah, because there's these kind of weird moments in the film, where you're just where did that come from? Was this originally a different film?
Yeah, exactly. It definitely feels weird. The plot is pretty simple. So it's 1916. It's Mexico. There are bandits who are terrorizing this one town, and one young woman, she's trying to find somebody who will come and defend the village. Basically, it's like the plot of The Magnificent Seven. She goes to the village to try to find somebody who's going to defend her people from this bandit El Guapo, and everybody in town's just yeah, whatever, get out of here. And she goes next door to the mission, to the church, and they're showing a film, and she's doesn't know film that well. She thinks she's watching a newsreel, but she's watching a comedy short of the three Amigos. The typical plot we find out for one of these three Amigos films is that they are three wealthy landowners in Mexico who also like to help fight for keeping the peasants happy and free, justice and all this nonsense from bandits. So it's kind of like, one of your noblesse oblige stories like Zorro and the Scarlet Pimpernel and
it ends like they rid the town of the bad guys, and then the townsfolk offer them money, and then they
turn it down, of course, because they really just came out to fight for justice. And of course, within the context of knowing the films, the reality is they don't need the money anyway because they are rich landowners secretly.
Yeah.
But she doesn't understand what she's seeing. And so she goes off to the telegraph office and writes to the three Amigos and offers them money, which she assumes they will turn down because that's what she saw in the film.
Yeah.
To come and fight off El Guapo and his men. And because she's so poor, she can't send the entire message that explains the situation, so they edit it down a lot. And the telegram that they get just says, you guys are great. Come down here, put on a show. We'll pay you 100,000 pesos to get rid of El Guapo. And so they don't understand that. They think they're putting in just a personal appearance situation. They're going to put on a little bit of a show.
And at the
like
same
vaudeville.
time, they get fired from...
At the same time, they have gotten fired from their movie studio. I really wish there was more of the movie studio, but that's me. I like seeing movies about movie studios, making fun of movie studios, etc. Singing in the Rain is one of my favorite films. I loved Hail Caesar. And watching this, I was just like, I kind of want to rewatch Hail Caesar or Barton Fink. Barton Fink's a dark movie, but still, Yeah, so they got fired because they demand more money, and the studio head, who is played by Joe Mantegna, is like, yeah, no, you're out of here. And so now they're stuck. They have no money. They even don't have any clothes because everything has been provided by the studio. And they get this telegram saying, come to Mexico, put on a show. That's what they think. And we'll pay you. And they're like, yeah, we are absolutely going to do this because we have nothing else going for us. So that's how they end up in Mexico. And they make their way to first the larger village, where at the same time, a German has shown up. He has flown into the just outside the village on what looks like the Red Baron's plane, essentially.
Yeah.
And he is there, and he has his two buddies who have come into town. And so there's an entire subplot of these Germans who are arming bandits with guns, which is kind of interesting because it's 1916, and so the film doesn't really explain it, but what they're alluding to is an actual thing, sort of, the Zimmerman telegram, where Germany was trying to get Mexico to go in with them on the First World War with the offer of, you can reconquer all of your territory. And Mexico was not in a place at the time to actually do that. So their response was like, no, this isn't going to work. This is not going to work for us. We have enough things going on here. Because this is at the same time, you've got I guess it's Zapata. There's a lot going on at the actual time period is actually happening in the background. So these Germans show up and they're arming the bandits at the same time. And I just find it interesting that they're alluding to this thing that is, inspired by history, but they don't actually comment on it at all.
You know what? They probably did, and it got cut.
Who knows? Exactly. Who knows? But yeah, so it turns out, that it's the Germans who are arming El Guapo. And, why, I don't know if they ever actually explained why they're doing it.
There's multiple mistaken identity thing goes on so that the people of this bar, the saloon, they all think that the
three Amigos are the Germans because they've been warned about the Germans who are going to come in and basically do whatever they want. And of course the Amigos show up and they put on a ridiculous vaudeville routine because they just think that they're in town for a show. Eventually they make their way to the little town of Santa Poco, right, which really stuck out to me because I'm like, I've been doing Duolingo for almost a year now. And I'm like, oh, that's grammatically extremely incorrect. So yeah, they eventually end up back at the village. Of course, they don't understand that, again, this is real, this isn't a show. The next day, the three bandits show up, and they put on their show, and the bandits are so baffled that they leave town.
Yeah.
basically just to go back to El Guapo and tell him, yo, we don't know what's going on with these dudes. But they think that they've won. This is great. And then there's like a big fiesta. They're setting off fireworks, and there's
kissing. And,
yes, there's romance. There's ridiculousness. There's Chevy Chase pretending to play guitar. Of course, the next day, El Guapo shows up with like 60 men. They soon realize, these guys are firing live bullets because Steve Martin gets shot in the arm.
And amusingly, he repeatedly got shot in the arm in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Yeah, and it's the same arm. It's the same spot. Yeah, so this is just the thing for him. And of course, like the rest of the film, you forget that he got shot because he can use his arm. He's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. They leave town, and then they feel terrible for having done it. And it's Martin Short's character, Ned, who basically says, we have nothing to go back to. And yeah, we can run out of town like cowards, but what are we going to do? Go back to Hollywood? We're fired. Nobody wants us around.
Yep.
Let's actually become the heroes that we pretend we are. It is interesting. Like they do have their three characters. Steve Martin, of course, is like their leader. Martin Short is kind of, the happy innocent.
Yeah.
And Chevy Chase is sort of the dumb vain one.
Yeah.
And they do kind of play those roles.
Dusty Bottoms.
Dusty Bottoms. God.
Yeah.
Yes. What is Steve Martin's name? Lucky Day.
Yeah.
And
Ned
Nederlander.
Yeah.
Yes, is Martin Short. It's an old trope, It's the sort of thing you would see, like, it's like Marx Brothers type thing, where each guy has like their sort of character.
And plus, since every joke, every joke usually has a 3-beat thing.
Yes,
like
it works.
They do that a lot. So
they think they come up with a plan for how to defeat El Guapo, which has to do with like finding a singing bush where they can summon a sword. Oh no, that's because they have to go and find El Guapo's place. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what that was all about.
Yeah. I guess one of the townsfolk tell them that.
Yeah.
And you just assume like, they just told him some.
But it turns out it's absolutely
yeah.
But it turns out it's absolutely like true. They do find a singing bush, which is voiced by Randy Newman with like his voice like pitched up or something, just singing all these like ridiculous old, like Camptown races and Oh Susanna and stuff.
Oh, and then they have to find the invisible swordsman.
And they have to find the invisible swordsman.
They all shoot in the air and they say like the magic words, which is just like nonsense.
Yep.
And Chevy Chase shoots to the side and he ends up killing the swordsman.
Of course. It's just such a weird and kind of like weird fantasy out of place thing that I kind of wish there had been more of that weird sort of stuff, because otherwise it just feels out of place.
Yeah, because it's weird. So it starts off, they're movie stars, they're obviously in Fakeville.
Yeah.
And then they come in, and then most of the movie is like, we're in the desert.
And it's silly, but it's not unrealistic.
But then suddenly, when they're on their way to El Guapo's, suddenly they're like on a film stage at night.
Yes.
And all these animals come up and start, like, while they're singing, and the animals just start, like there's a coyote, there's an owl, there's a bunny.
Yeah.
There's a turtle.
Well, that would be a tortoise.
Tortoise.
It is the desert. Yeah, so there is like once they're actually out on the road to find El Guapo, it does sort of get into this weird, and obviously like it's supposed to be an homage to old cowboy films or like the road movies with Hope and Crosby. Like it takes on this unrealistic element, which is fine. It actually looks great. Like it looks very fake, but in a way that I really like. And I wish more of the film had actually been fake.
That's the thing. Like it just seems like a gag that just lasts for like 10 minutes, and then we're right back into this other movie.
Right. So it just feels really weird and uneven. And it's a shame because again, like the stuff where they get really unrealistic is enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I wish there had been more of that. Or like it's like commit to one or the other. You could argue like the same thing happens in Blazing Saddles where they get unrealistic, but they kind of do it throughout that film in ways that it isn't that jarring when you get to the end of the movie and it just unravels into this like fourth wall breaking. And the thing is, at least this movie, it's not that it's long and boring exactly, but there are times where it just kind of feels slow, and at least it's a pretty good-looking movie, though.
Yeah.
So it's annoying, but it's not
Like, it's fun to see them
Yeah.
in their ridiculous outfits in
Yeah.
the middle of the desert. Like,
It is. Yeah. But like the entire scene where they have to go off to El Guapo's hideout and rescue Carmen goes on for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's not that it can't go on for a while and make up a good chunk of the film. I mean, it makes sense to do that, but there are a lot of scenes that just drag on too long in there. So that, we spend way too long with Martin Short being tied up with the piñatas, and way too long with Steve Martin in the basement chained up.
You know what would have worked with Martin Short? If they didn't keep showing him up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if they just didn't show him at
Yeah.
all, and suddenly he falls. It's
Because he's
raiding
not-
Gringos, and then suddenly he falls down.
Right, because he's not really doing anything. We just see him up there like it's like that's not funny.
Yeah.
What actually works in both in like that entire sequence is Chevy Chase, because he's actually up moving around and doing something. He gets into disguise and he rescues Carmen, and they go off to pistol whip the guard, and like they're actually doing stuff. So like his whole sequence actually works, whereas Steve Martin, I'm like, they keep cutting back to him trying to move in his chains, and like it's just not that interesting. But yeah, so eventually like they're able to save the day because they go back off. They save Carmen, they ride off back to town, and then they come back to the town and they say basically we're gonna have to take on the bandits. And the way that they take on the bandits is they very, very fast. So a bunch of costumes so that everybody in town is dressed like the Three Amigos.
This starts by them asking the Mexican town, "What are you good at?" And everyone's like,
Yeah, I know.
It's a very
cringy scene. Yeah, that's the scene where I kind of was like, yeah, no, this is not good.
And of course, like, these dumb gringos figure it all out. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we'll do what we did in Amigos.
Yeah.
And
like I wouldn't necessarily mind, we're going to use a plot from one of our films to beat the bad guys. Like, that's fine. That's okay. But like it just feels kind of weird where it's like this town doesn't know how to fend for themselves. They instruct the town to have everybody disguise themselves as amigos and basically confuse the heck out of the bandits. So they confuse the bandits because the bandits can't figure out why, the amigos just keep popping up in different parts of the village. But also everyone's armed.
yeah,
Everybody has guns.
Guns.
Everybody's got a weapon. And I'm just like, well, why didn't you guys just shoot the bandits in the first place then?
Yeah.
So like that doesn't make
Well, that's
any
part
sense.
of the outfit.
I
But I don't know. It's
it's
kind of funny.
but that part just annoys me so much because I'm just like, but now you all have guns. Well, where were the guns before? Like, so unless we had a scene where like they showed them taking the Germans' guns, now that would actually make sense. If like we had a scene where like when they rescued Carmen, one of them carried off a bunch of guns with them that they took from the Germans because the Germans have been supplying the guns. Now there's where you fixed a plot hole.
I don't mind plot holes as much.
This one bothers me.
In comedies, though.
Well, I'm bothered by this one because the entire rescue of the village hinges on the fact that now they're not only are they dressed up and confusing the bandits, but they have enough bullets to shoot them all.
Yeah.
And they have enough guns that everybody's armed and can shoot at them. Like, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I know it's a comedy, but like, at least show us why do they all have guns now where they didn't have them before and couldn't like fight against these guys. Yeah, so they kill off the bandits. And then they think that they're going to be able to hook up with the girls, and the girls are just like, "No, you're not."
Right.
Thanks for doing this.
Actually, that's pretty funny when Steve Martin says, "I'll be back someday," and she's like, "Why?"
That is good, actually. She's just like, "No." Yeah. Yeah, again, like there are funny things in this movie, and that is a very funny response from her,
Yeah.
But yeah, so then they ride off into the sunset as actual heroes and not just actors, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It's other than like what we pointed out with that kind of the cringy, these white Americans come in and tell them how to beat the town.
Like for the most part, like they're the butt of the jokes.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's kind of.
And
help
another
disarm
thing,
it.
actually, El Guapo is great.
Oh, well,
Like-
he should be. Because he is, he is a legit Mexican actor and director. El Guapo, the villain, is played by Alfonso Arau. He's the director of like Water for Chocolate and A Walk in the Clouds, and he was in The Wild Bunch. He's in El Topo, I think.
He comes very close to just stealing this movie.
Oh, absolutely, because he's a real actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's all these scenes like, and I was constantly worried that his sidekick was going to be gay.
You thought there was going to be like a gay panic thing?
Yeah.
They never went there.
I kept because
it's the 80s and that's so typical, but
I know.
they never go there.
And so like the whole movie, I'm like, oh, is that going to happen? Is that going to happen? And it didn't. So
Thankfully, no.
I'm glad.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there are Mexican actors in this film, and so I mean, I don't know if maybe their feelings on it are, well, a job's a job, and you take what jobs you get. B, it's obviously playing off of old cowboy movies where everything is kind of this stereotype, and so maybe they're just not that strongly offended by it. I don't know. Like today, I think it's good to like look at things with a different eye and just be like, well, how does somebody who actually comes from Mexico, how would they watch this? There are a lot of people who still think Mexico is this, whether they still think it looks like 1916. And
I mean, like this Mexico is basically a Speedy Gonzalez cartoon.
In a way, yeah, yeah.
It's just warlords and villages, and
Yeah.
and everyone's ignorant and slow, and
I mean, well, I don't know. Well, yeah, the people in the bar are ignorant and slow. The people in the village don't. They never come off as ignorant or stupid. I don't think, except for the ending where it's just like, yeah, well, we never thought of your plan to fight. I mean, that's where it falls apart in the end. But I don't think the village that they go to in Santa Poco, I don't feel like they ever come across, poorly. But at the same time, they are still like playing stereotypes of the humble peasant. I'm just curious as to how somebody else would feel watching it, because like, look, I'm a white person from Philadelphia. I'm not going to respond to it the same way. It's just interesting to me that Mexico does hold this place in the American imagination still, even now, as like the land of bandits. And because, I mean, that's what the news talks to us about. They don't show Mexico as a very complex country, ethnically, culturally, geographically. I mean, our image of Mexico in the United States is it's a dry, dusty desert place where there are bandits, and whether the bandits are, on horses or if they're in jeeps, in the show Narcos, that's still how we picture.
And it just happens to have like the second largest city in the world.
Right, exactly. Mexico City is huge and sophisticated, and people in Mexico, like, it's a complicated country. Frankly, people should go and watch a lot of Mexican cinema. Some of the best directors working today are from Mexico. Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón. Children of Men is one of my favorite movies. Okay, that's a little dark, but Mexican cinema is vast and varied and worth watching. And as I said, like the villain of the film is a Mexican director, and I didn't even know his wife actually is the woman who wrote like Water for Chocolate, the book, which I've read. Oh. It's very good.
So what about the time period?
What about it?
Oh, you like, for one thing, so this is Steve Martin, another movie where he's looking back on early movies. This time 1916s. Yeah. Before it was 1930s.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. This is the second time we've watched a Steve Martin film, and Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid was written around the film noir, and this is written around cowboy movies. And yeah, I think it's kind of nice as an homage to not just cowboy movies, and when I say cowboy movies, I mean beyond being just westerns, because western is a very broad genre, but cowboy movies in my head are specifically things like your Gene Autry movies where you have a singing cowboy, and that's kind of what this is, going off of. And by having it being like a couple of guys, several guys together traveling in the desert, again, it's like those Hope and Crosby films. Yeah. I like that. I like those aspects of it. And I think making an homage to not just that, but also playing with silent film is kind of neat. And I like when movies play with silent film. Mm-hmm. And I wish there had actually been more of the silent film stuff in this. And I did read that they were actually wearing some of the lead paint on their faces that they would use in silent film. And I'm just like, oh, don't do that. But it looked good. I mean, it looked authentic,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, Three Amigos, it's definitely funny in parts, but it could have been funnier. It should have been tightened up. And yeah, John Landis, I don't know, man.
Nah.
Not a good dude. So that was Three Amigos. You can follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter. You can write to us through email. We are maryvsmovies@gmail.com. Please email us with any questions, comments, requests, criticisms. We are always happy to hear from the audience. Mm-hmm. We are going on a brief hiatus.
What?
Yeah. Very, very brief. This is I'm considering this the end of season 1. This was our episode 24.
It's over? The show is over?
No, the show is not over. In fact, I have already planned out like 2 months worth of movies coming up. But in the meantime,
it's all over?
It is not all over.
Am I going to have to do another list of my favorite movies?
Oh my God. It is not over. We are coming back in a week or 2. It depends on how long it takes us to get back from Colorado. But yeah, we are going to a family occasion out in Colorado. It's going to involve us driving a lot. In the age of COVID, that's a little nerve-wracking, but we'll do what we can. But this also means that we won't be able to watch and record for the podcast. So yeah, a week or 2 we'll be off. And when we come back, we will start season 2 with our theme month of Back to School, wherein we will be watching not the movie Back to School, because I've already seen that a couple of times. I know that would have been fun, but I've already seen it. But the next film when we come back will be Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I have not seen. And
I haven't seen it either.
Really? Okay, yeah. Cool. So we're both going in kind of blind. So yes, but we will be back soon. You know what? It was 24 episodes. This actually works out kind of nicely. It was 24 episodes, and just like they used to make TV series in the 1980s, now we're going on our very brief summer break.
There's no more Riptide?
Nope. Riptide. Oh my God.
No more Robaz? Where's when I gotta get my Robaz fix?
Well, so until next time.
In a way, all of us has an El Guapo to face. For some, shyness might be their El Guapo. For others, a lack of education might be their El Guapo. For us, El Guapo is a big, dangerous man who wants to kill us.
Fair enough.